This is the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
We are TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
America's evil genius, Travis Cook, back with you once again here on TruthFrequencyRadio.com, 90.7 FM in Denver. Great to be back with you for another week of eye-gouging, crotch-kicking, no-holds-barred political analysis. We are back with you wherever you are across this great nation or around the world on this Tuesday afternoon. I hope it's a beautiful one wherever you might be. And I noticed something kind of interesting last week. Hillary Clinton, the presumptive nominee on the Democratic side, presumptive if only because they can't seem to find anybody else in that party who has any sort of name recognition or doesn't sound like your crazy uncle or some combination of the two. She's sort of the presumptive candidate by default. She actually opened her mouth last week. She's been going on for the last several weeks and months, not really saying much of anything, not really giving interviews, being very careful about what she says and doesn't say in public. And from a purely strategic standpoint, I guess that's understandable. After all, she's a presumptive nominee. Nobody else is out there in her party who's really mounting any kind of a challenge to her. So really, if she opens her mouth, more bad things can happen than good. It's almost better in her situation to just keep her mouth shut, let the process play out, and focus on the Republican candidate. But she did open her trap last week, and boy, was it a doozy. Boy, did she not disappoint for those of us on the right who are waiting for and looking for things to castigate her over. Last week, good old Hillary Pantsuits Clinton decided she was going to talk about voter ID laws. She was down there at Texas Southern University in Houston, Texas. And she took aim at us evil conservatives when she was talking about supposed problems with voting. Oh, yes. She said, and I quote, "We have a responsibility to say clearly and directly what's really going on in our country. Because what is happening is a sweeping effort to disempower and disenfranchise people of color, poor people, and young people from one end of our country to the other." Wow. That's some pretty heavy charges there, old pantsuit. Pretty heavy charges indeed. So Hillary Clinton is basically saying that those of us who are in favor of more stringent voter ID laws or making sure that the votes that are counted are legitimate, she's saying those of us who engage in such actions are essentially racist. That we're doing so because of racial bias. We're trying to disenfranchise minorities. But there's a very clear and I think obvious logical fallacy to that. Because if it were true that Republicans and conservatives were focused on disenfranchising minorities, then while we pined for laws that would disenfranchise them, would we not also at the same time demand that whites who did not meet the qualifications to vote, would we not demand that those whites who do not meet those qualifications be allowed to vote? Well, we would. And yet, if you look at the record, you do not see examples of Republicans or conservatives demanding that whites who are not able to vote be allowed to do so while trying to keep minorities from voting. You don't see that. Try and find an example of that. You're going to have a very tough time of it. So we don't do that. What we legitimately are looking for, and I'm counting myself in the group that I'm using the term they to refer to. I'm one of they in this sense. What we are looking to do is to very simply have one set of rules that applies to everybody. Now, how messed up is it that in 2015 you can take a position that everybody should play by the same rules, and that position is considered racism? That taking the position that everybody should meet the same qualifications, the same requirements, and follow the same laws, the same rules, that very idea is considered, oh my God, racist. It would be funny if it weren't so true. But evidently that's where we are in the mind of Hillary Clinton now. But really what Hillary's talking about, these troublesome voting laws that she's talking about, are really a red herring. It's really much ado about nothing. When you think about it, are there truly difficulties in voting? Did the process of voting become difficult at some point down the line? It'd be surprising to me if it did. Where is this influx of people? Where is this big group of people that are out there that are telling us that, hey, I wish I could vote, I would have voted, but I just couldn't figure out how to do it? Where are these people? Where are these people that have some sort of difficulty getting a photo ID? I mean, I don't know about you, but at least in my life experience, and granted, I haven't seen everything, I haven't been everywhere, I don't claim to have been, but I have yet to see a license bureau anywhere in this country that was stuck in the days of Jim Crow and had a big sign on it that said whites only. Where's the license bureau out there that prohibits minorities from getting IDs? Because I haven't seen it. I'm pretty certain that it doesn't exist. If it does, I'd love for someone to point it out to me. Is there a license bureau out there that when you go to pick up an ID that they say to you, well, I need to know how much money you make a year, and if you make under, say, $40,000 a year, we're not going to give you an ID? Does that happen? Is there a license bureau somewhere out there that does that? Because I'd like to know about them, if there are. I certainly have never heard of it. Hillary Clinton claiming that we're trying to disenfranchise the youth, but there again, is there a license bureau out there anywhere that when you go in there and ask for an ID, they say, well, how old are you? Because if you're under 40, we're not going to give you an ID. We're not going to let you vote. Does that happen? Has anybody been turned away at the polls anywhere in this nation because a poll worker said to them, well, I'm sorry, you're a minority, I can't let you vote. Oh, I'm sorry, you look like you're poor, I can't let you vote. Oh, I'm sorry, you look like a young person, I can't let you vote. Has there been one documented case of that in the last half century? Not as far as I know. And I suspect probably not as far as you know either. Bottom line is, if you're a minority, if you're a young person, if you're a poor person, you can vote. It's not that difficult to do so. Granted, it may not be quite as easy as ordering a value meal at McDonald's, but it ain't much harder than that. This is not a particularly high bar, people. But yet you have a presidential candidate, the de facto nominee of a major political party, inferring that the process we have behind voting, the voting process as it stands today, is somehow too difficult, and as a result, people are being disenfranchised. Well, real life would seem to point out something far, far different. Incidentally, sometimes you even hear people say, well, you know, people have to work and they can't get off work to vote. Well, you know what? There are at least some states, and Missouri is one of them, by the way, where that's not an excuse. Because here in Missouri, I believe if you do not have, I think it's 2 uninterrupted hours where you are not at work but the polls are open, if you don't have that, your boss has to let you off of work to vote if you ask. I believe it's 2 hours. It might be 3, but I want to say 2. Now, I don't know how many other states have laws like that, but I'm sure we cannot be the only one. The bottom line is, if you want to vote bad enough, there's absentee ballots, all kinds of other things too. If you want to vote bad enough, I don't care what your life situation is, you can do it. If you want an ID bad enough, I don't care what your life situation is, you can do it. Is there somebody out there charging $1,000 or $2,000 for photo IDs, for legitimate ones? No, there's not. So that's not an issue. Where are those people who are saying, I wish I could have voted, but I just couldn't figure out how to do it? I certainly don't hear any of them. I haven't seen that big group of people come forth and complain and demand those things. I certainly haven't. The only people it seems like I hear talk about this are politicians. The only people I ever see bring up the idea of making voting easier or making it expand to more people are politicians. I never hear good old regular Americans, I never hear potential voters come out and say, I wanted to vote, but I couldn't. Couldn't figure out how. Or I didn't make enough money. I was a minority, they wouldn't let me. I literally never hear that. But the bottom line is Hillary Clinton and other Democrats find a potential advantage in trying to expand the voting base, the voting universe, if you will, to those who somehow cannot manage their lives in such a way or are not bright enough, evidently, to figure out how to vote. There must be a reason for it. They must be getting some kind of advantage out of it. But for a moment, I want you to stop, and I want you to set party affiliations aside. I want you to set ideology aside. I want you to set your personal opinion of Mrs. Clinton aside, whether that's bad, good, or indifferent. I want you to set all of that aside, and I want you to think about a very general question, because I think this is very important. I want you to think of a very general question for just a moment. As a nation, is it more important for us, does it do us more good to focus on having a higher quantity of people voting, or would it do us more good to focus on having a higher quality of people voting? In other words, would adding people to the voting rolls, adding people to come out to the polling place and vote in election day, adding people to that universe, in and of itself, with no consideration to any factors that they might bring to the table, would simply increasing the number of people voting, would that be better for us? Or could it potentially be harmful? Well, at least in a general sense, I should think it would likely be harmful. Think about it for a second. Let's say that you're driving in your car and you break down alongside the road. And let's say, for discussion, 50 different people stopped to help you. Would each of those 50 people who wanted to help you repair your car, would each of those 50 people bring an equal amount of skill and knowledge to the table? No. You might be in a situation where 50 people stop to help you, but 2 of them are auto mechanics. Now, would you really give those auto mechanics the same amount of attention, the same amount of deference that you would the other 48 people? God, I should hope not. Instead, I would hope that you would listen to the 2 auto mechanics and tell the other 48 people to pound sand. Because the auto mechanics probably know what they're talking about. The other 48 people who are not mechanics, far less likely to do so. Point of this is, not all contributions in life are equal. Not all people bring the same things to the table. Not all people bring an equal amount of positive influence to the table. In fact, there are some people in various avenues of life who cause more harm by their involvement than they cause good. Now let's go from that example of the mechanic in the car and apply this logic to the very real world of voting. Hillary Clinton, by essentially her own admission, is trolling for expanded voter base, trolling for voters among let's just face it, the lowest echelon of society. You know, the poor minorities who can't find an ID, the young people, the impoverished. I'm not making a value judgment on who they are as people. I'm telling you that she's instead looking for votes among people who have not been as successful as everybody else. I think we can agree on that. Whether in the case of young people, it's people who have not had the time and opportunity and skill set yet to have that success, or whether it's the poor minority communities where people just have failed in their lives. That's where she's going for the votes. That's who she wants us to use to expand the voter base. And yes, illegal immigrants too, people that have broken the law to get here. People who have either been... So Hillary Clinton wants the voter base to expand by people who have either been unsuccessful in this country, don't have enough life experience to be successful yet, or people who broke the freaking law to get here. That's where she wants us to expand voting at. That's where she wants us to go. Now, honestly ask yourself the question. Would the decisions that our voting public makes collectively, would they be better decisions if we had more influence from people like that? Think about that. Would we be better off giving some or even more influence to people who fit in those categories? People who heretofore have not been able to do what it takes to vote, either they haven't thought to do it, or they're not smart enough to do it, or can't manage their lives to the point where they can do it, whatever the case may be. Are we truly better off for people like that being involved in the process? I don't think we are. And in order to give you some examples of why I think that way, I don't think we need to look any further than a lot of our inner cities and urban areas in America today. Your Baltimores, your Detroits, your Los Angeleses, your Miamis. All of the urban hellholes that we see on the news every night. Poverty, violence, crime, corruption, any number of other sins and transgressions we could talk about. And when Cleveland being another great city, Chicago, oh my God, what an example Chicago is. And when you look at any of these urban hellholes, where there's pathology and poverty and crime rampant, you notice something very distinctive. That most of these places have been under Democratic control. And not only have been under Democratic control, but they've been under Democratic control for decades. St. Louis, not too far from where we tape this show, St. Louis City, I would put on that list. Places that have been dominated by the Democratic Party for 20, 30, 50, 60, 70 years in some cases. Well, you have all of these cities that have been under Democratic control. You have all of these cities where those who have voted have most often voted Democrat, to the point that in a lot of cities there isn't even really a Republican Party there. I can't remember the last time a Republican ran for the mayor of St. Louis. It may never have happened. It certainly hasn't happened in my lifetime. The Republican Party in most of these cities is an afterthought, if it exists at all. It's been a one-party show. It's been nothing but Democrats. It's been nothing but liberalism. It's been nothing but the pursuit of social justice. That is the politics of these places. Well, actions have consequences. And you go to Chicago, St. Louis, Detroit, Cleveland, Miami, and the proof is in the pudding. You drive through those cities. Hopefully you lock your car doors because you'll probably be carjacked. But you drive through those cities. You see the pathology. You see the crime. You see the poverty. And then you look to who is in charge. Now, am I telling you that Democratic control necessarily leads to the lack of morality, the lack of character that results in poverty and pathology? I'm not sure. It could be the opposite. It could be the lack of character that's there to begin with leads to people voting Democrat. I don't know. It's kind of a chicken and the egg argument. But in any case, whatever the start of it is, whatever the reasoning for it is, when you have cities, when you have places that are under Democratic control for decades, they become hellholes. Now, we have a sitting presidential candidate who wants us to go into those places and recruit more voters there. Well, look what those voters have done to their own cities. Look what the results have been of the policies and people they've been putting into office for decades in their own cities. And now you're going to invite them to vote in a presidential race? Now you're going to invite them into national politics? To hell with you! Now, I know most other talk show hosts would treat a topic like this with kid gloves, would use some very measured tones when talking about these things, might even skirt around some of the issues and be very careful about their phrasing. I'm not most talk show hosts, as you may have noticed by now. So I will say this. I can look just 10, 12 miles away from the studio in which we record this show, and I can go down to downtown St. Louis and look at that hellhole. I can drive 5 hours from here to Chicago. I can look at that hellhole. I can go 4 hours across the state to downtown Kansas City, look at that hellhole, and I will look at those places and tell you that if that is what bringing these extra voters into the fold will result in, then we need to keep these voters as far away from presidential and national politics as we possibly can. And I'm not ashamed to say it. Not afraid to say it either. I look back over the last year when we turn on our televisions. We see the cameras in places like Ferguson, just a short drive from where we record this show. And we see those people, many of them minority, many of them even young white folks. We had that combination of people that Hillary Clinton really wants to get more involved in the process. You know, poor minorities and young white folks all together burning and looting and causing lawlessness and standing up for a man who tried to kill a police officer. And you think those people need to be more involved in the political process? You think somehow we as a nation, we as a culture, we as a society could somehow benefit from their input? Take one look at their neighborhood and you'll see what their input will get you. And that's right out here in Ferguson. Those of you around the country may not know this because it was a local story. I don't know that it got picked up nationally all that much, but when Ferguson was going on, one of the first things that happened was the Democrats went in there and tried to launch voting drives. They tried to convince these people that the rioting and the violence and the crime that they were perpetrating themselves was not their fault, but was instead the fault of the fact that they just haven't been represented. It's asinine when you stop and think about it. It's making excuses for people who don't follow the law and don't respect the culture of this nation. It's inexcusable. The people that riot and burn buildings, commit crimes in Ferguson, or the people that have set Baltimore on fire, do they deserve to be represented? If they are represented more heavily, how on earth could that be a positive thing? I can't see that it could be. Instead, over time, if this happened, we would become a nation of Detroit. The pathology would no longer be confined. It would escape those confines it's currently in. And I know this is uncomfortable for some people. There is an idea out there, somewhat even ingrained into American civics, that everybody deserves to vote. Everybody's voice should be heard. But I am here to tell you, by looking at the behavior of some of my fellow man in this nation, by looking about 7 miles down the road from here, about 8-10 months ago, what happened in Ferguson, or looking down in South City at what happened when another young man was was shot by a police officer when he was breaking the law, or by looking over in Baltimore, I can look at my fellow man and tell you that no! There are some people who do not deserve the right to vote. I am not talking about specific races. I'm talking about specific behaviors. Now, I, for one, am in favor of a lot more stronger voting laws. Certainly voter ID and things like that. I would go much further, by the way, than any Republican's talking about. I would be in favor of raising the voting age to 30. Or I would be in favor of going back to the old system where only property owners were allowed to vote. That way you've proved you've contributed to society before you get a say. I like that idea, but make no mistake. There's no Republican out there, well, other than me, who's actually talking about those things right now. So for as draconian as Hillary Clinton wants you to think we are, I got news for you. The Republican Party as it stands for today has not gone anywhere near what we need to do when it comes to reforming voting in the United States of America. Instead, up to now, all it has been is the very logical and even obvious step of making sure that everybody plays by the same rules, that every legitimate vote counts, and that every illegitimate vote is not allowed to be cast. Simple as pie. Doesn't matter what race you are, doesn't matter what income level you are, doesn't matter what age you are. All we want is for the rules to be followed.